They say that diamonds are a girl's best friend, but honey, I'd rather have property. Hey there guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Patricia Bright and you are watching The Break, where we give you the tools to learn, grow and navigate life like a boss and make money move in the process. I hope you are doing well. Yes, today we are doing it. The investment series continues, darlings. We are gonna get into it. Today, I wanna talk about property investing. If you watch my last video on investing, I've kind of tried to break down that there are lots of different types of investing and property is just one little aspect of this. And I thought this would be a great place for me to start because yes, I'm actually a property investor. What? This sounds kind of crazy, but yes, we've made it. I am part of the club. Can I retire on a beach by myself? No, I cannot. I also did a video the last time where I took you into the most recent property that I purchased. I showed you around it. I told you how much it rents for. I told you how much I purchased it for. And I did notice there were a lot of questions in the comment about the yield, about the rental income, about why it's even valuable if I spent £450,000 in it, and if I only make 1,800 or so on it, how is it valuable? So I realized that there were a lot of people who maybe didn't entirely know the principles about property investing and why it could be valuable and how it would work. Now, if you are looking for someone who's going to say, you can be an investor, you can be an investor, you can be an investor, you don't even need to put any money down and you can be a property millionaire, you're on the wrong channel. I don't believe that. I do not ascribe to that school of thought. Everything takes work, and anyone who tells you otherwise is a liar and a cheat. Don't listen to them. Just run as far as you possibly can. So I feel like I should quickly get into my investing journey, how I've made it work and what my portfolio currently looks like. And what I want to tell people right here, right now, this is not a brag. It is not a show off. I share numbers like this because it's really important. I watch a ton of guys on YouTube who are like, I make £1 million a day. People are very brazen when it comes to their revenue, and I find it really, really valuable because it gives me some context, but I know that it can be a little bit awkward when a girl does it. But my whole vibe is to break down that stigma, and I think that if one person shares, it helps others break in as well, which is why this page is called The Break. Anyway, so my investment story starts actually before I purchased my first ever home, and it's actually because my mum was kind of doing this without knowing she was doing this. I shared this story a few times before, but she basically bought a house for cheap. It grew a lot in value. She purchased more properties with that revenue, and she forced me to be involved. I did not reap any of the rewards. I did not get any salaries. She was just like, go to the house, check on the tenants. And that was about it. I was doing contracts, I was serving notices, I was cleaning toilets. I was doing a lot of stuff when it came to like managing and helping my mum's property portfolio. And I was doing it for free. I knew how hard it was to be a landlord. I knew how difficult it was to find good tenants. I knew the kind of issues that tenants would come up against. So for me, it wasn't something that I actually really wanted to get into doing, even though she had done quite well in it. And so I had a career, I had a full-time job, and then I did what most people do is I saved for a deposit for my first property. So the market was really, really low at the time I bought my house, but because we had cash, we were able to get a mortgage, put down 20%, and then we bought this house for £310,000. I've told this story like 100 times. Again, I did not buy that on my own. I bought that with my partner who worked the doors. He was a doorman. He had no student loan because he basically worked every night of the week. I had a full-time job, and we were both very intense workers, and that meant we were able to put down about £35,000 to buy this first property. So we put down just over 10% when it came to the deposit. And I thought that would be the end of my property journey, but that was not the case. What ended up happening is I ended up building a business, my YouTube business. So I mentioned this before, but I had this cash within my business and we wanted to move into a bigger home. So we ended up selling the property that we owned as individuals to our company at market rate. And actually the property had had grown by almost 50%. It was worth over £600,000, and our company now bought that property. And then we used that money, that increase in money, to buy the home that we live in right about now. And that property is now owned within our own personal company. I hope that makes sense. It's similar to an LLC or an S Corp in the US purchasing property. If you've got cash, or if your company has cash, it can invest in assets. So that is what my company has. And I continue to build more money within my business. My YouTube was popping off. Yes, those YouTube checks coming in, not just YouTube checks. I wish it was that easy, but lots of the other things I invested in also started to make a return as well. Some of my ideas, some of my products. And so that gave me a large pot of cash. So I was able to use the cash that I'd built up in my business to then invest in additional properties. So I bought one property on auction, and then we were able to find an amazing property, the one that I showed you guys around on the open market. It was a bargain because that seller was really ready to get rid of that property, and we've rented that out. Now, all three of our properties are rented. We receive a rental income of from all of the properties in total of around £5,000 or so per month. But the value of the assets are over £1 million. So that is a little bit about my property journey. I will say we also invested into those properties that we bought on the cheap by basically renovating them, making them much more livable. We've done them up really nicely. We've had great tenants in them. Our tenants in our current property have lived there for the last 3 years, and we haven't raised the rent at all. They're amazing, and we love being able to provide a family a home. That's what I'm going to say there. Okay, so that is enough about me, and I thought I'd go ahead and talk about the different ways that property investing can work. So if you guys remember, in my last video, I gave a little bit of a breakdown of what investing is. It's the idea of putting money into something today and hoping that it will produce a return or increase in value tomorrow. And the same principle, of course, applies to property investing. First way you can invest in property is to buy it for cheap and sell it for more. And you see a lot of people do this either by flipping or fixing a broken down property, making it all beautiful and fabulous and selling it for like double the price. No, that doesn't really happen. But the whole idea here is if you are able to find a property for under market value and then add value to it by either increasing square footage, improving how it looks, or the market just goes up naturally, then you are able to see a huge increase in the value of your asset. So for example, if you purchase a property for £50,000, but if it was well done, if it was in a nice area, it's actually worth £80,000, you've got a bargain on your hands. You might only need to spend £10,000 to improve that property to then make it worth £80,000. If you make those changes and then you sell it for £80,000, Bob's your uncle, your quid's in, and you've made a £20,000 profit. Does that make sense? Yeah, it should do. Now, in reality, it would be great if it was really that simple, but you need to, one, make sure that you're not overpaying for a property you need to do up. Two, you need to make sure you're actually able to do up that property within the budget to actually make a profit on the top of it. And you might have a value that you think a property is worth, but the market would determine if it's worth it or not. What are actual buyers willing to pay for that property? So there's no guarantee when it comes to flipping. However, most people who do flip properties have that experience, and there are numbers that you can plug in to make sure that a property investment is right for you. It's important to do your market research and to look at what the costs are when it comes to actually improving a property or fixing it up in preparation to flip. Now, from my perspective, I do not do any property flipping or anything like that because I personally do not have the time to invest in project managing. And if you don't manage a project, it's probably going to overspill and you end up losing your money over time. It's not something that I really want to do. I'm not queen of the DIY. The only foundations that I like to build are on my face, basically. So the one that most people hear is a lot about buy to let, and this is buying properties, holding it, and then renting it out. And now I come within that category. Yes, I have enough money to be able to purchase a property and then make it look nice, make it ready for tenants who need homes to live in. The whole point of having a buy to let mortgage is in the hope that your tenants will provide provide you a rent on a monthly basis and you can potentially live off the rent. It doesn't normally work like that. You need to have a huge portfolio to really be able to make, lots and lots of money off the back of that. But yes, you can make a decent living off of the rents that people give you if you own a lot of property. Now, for my personal circumstance, I shared this before, but I am a cash buyer. I have not got any mortgages on any of the properties that I have. That was my choice because I had a lot of cash. I knew that I wanted to invest it, and I liked the idea of not having to worry about a mortgage payment from a property I didn't live in. I really require security when it comes to my finances. I'm not a flashy person. I'm not a lavish person. I just want to make sure I always have a roof over my head. Maybe I need to see a therapist about that, but I hate the idea of me knowing I have all these other costs that I have to pay for, and if I have a tenant like not being a home or something, knowing that I'm liable for that mortgage payment kind of scares me. However, most people who do go down the buy to let route usually get a mortgage, and you'd usually be able to get a buy to let mortgage from mortgage providers. Now, with these kind of mortgages, you would normally be expected to put down a higher deposit, I believe, but it does vary depending on who your lender is. There are a number of different buy to let mortgage calculators that are out there which can give you an insight into how much you might be able to get on a mortgage, what your interest rates could look like. You probably want to shop around if this is a route that you want to go down. Now, when it comes to having a buy to let property, the calculation that you really want to know is the rental yield, and this is basically how much you get in versus the value of the property. Now, when it comes to the London property market, anywhere between 4 and 7% is a great return, and that's very similar to what you might find in the stock market as well. So if you invest in stocks, if you can get stocks that are giving you a 6%, 7% return, you're doing amazing, sweetie. Amazing. And this is one of the questions I got asked about, and I want to explain this to you. So for my example, I purchased my last property for £450,000. That's including stamp duty, that's including renovation costs, and then I rent it out for 1,930-ish. That is about £23,000 a year that I would get as a return. Now, as someone mentioned, it would take me many years to make that money back. That is not why I purchase property. I don't purchase it just to make extra money every month. I purchase it because of the capital gains and the long-term asset appreciation. So as a percentage, that £23,000 on my £450,000 investment is about a 5% return, which is relatively good in the London market. And I know a lot of people might look at the numbers and think £450,000 only makes you £23,000 a year. That's not a lot of money, but think about it. I could have £450,000 in a bank right now, and tomorrow it's the same amount. A year from now, it's the same amount, and in 5 years, it's probably worth even less because of inflation. So for me personally, using my cash and putting it into assets is super valuable. And when it comes to having a buy-to-let property, it's not just about the value of the property today, the rental income today, but it's the fact that it was probably going to be worth a lot more in 5, 10, 15 years, depending on what happens in the market. But there might be crashes, there might be peaks, whatever, but I'm a long-term investor. That is where you can get additional value and you become a real investor when it comes to property and buy-to-let. So there's some other terms that you see flying around, such as HMOs or rent to rent. HMOs is basically the principle of a landlord renting out room by room by room, or buying big properties and then putting loads of people inside the properties. This way you're able to increase your rental yield, meaning that you might be getting an 8% rental yield versus a 5% rental yield because people pay more as individuals within those properties. That is not a method that I personally use or that I know much about. And maybe I'm a romantic. I like the idea of renting to one family, giving them a home, and if they stay there for 10 years, great. That's just me personally. But I know other people who want to make, more money, they might go down the HMO option and just put 40 people in like a block of flats or something like that. I do think there are a lot more complications when it comes to having lots and lots of properties or having lots of tenants. That's a lot of contracts, that's a lot of people, that's a lot of emotions. That's also a lot of wear and tear on a property. So sometimes your costs can be higher in the long run. There's also rent to rent. This is basically where you rent from a landlord, give them a guaranteed rent, and then you basically sublet for a little bit more. Those are for people who really want to get into the property market, but might not have enough money of their own to maybe put down for deposit. So I think I've shared enough about how different types of property investing can work. Now I want to go into the pros and cons and how it can potentially be done if you have the income to do it. So I know we've all heard the term as safe as houses, and it's a bit of a cliche, but I definitely think it does ring true. Properties, bricks and mortar, people always need somewhere to live. That's why you kind of know that you're always going to make a return on a house in the long term, but not in the short term. A market might crash. You might buy a property at the peak of the market and then it falls by £20,000 within the space of a year. That can happen, but in the long run, the trajectory for homes is to go up. Remember, you've heard your parents say, I bought a house at £10,000. Like, not today. It's not possible anymore. And of course, it's great to be able to make passive income. Yes, that lying on the beach money, you don't have to work for it money. Yeah, that money. It is great to be able to receive an income from a tenant regularly if you don't have a high mortgage or you don't have high costs associated with the property. And when it comes to flipping as well, it's nice to be able to see a return on your investment really quickly. If you flip it quickly, you know that you invested the amount for the initial property, how much you spent on doing the property up and then selling it. It's just maths. It's great. So let's get into the cons of property investing. I know it seems like a really fun and juicy thing to do, which, I'm doing. I am a fan of, and I definitely think there are some pitfalls when it comes to being a property investor, and it might not be for everyone. So I will say that property investing is expensive. This is not the cheapest way to build a portfolio or to invest in your future. You need to put a lot of money down to be able to even get a deposit or a property in the first place. Most people are trying to even get themselves on the property ladder, let alone buying a property to invest in. You need a lot of cash up front. And anybody who's out there telling you, you don't need to put any money down, it's no money down, get a house. I do not ascribe to that school of thought. Anything that sounds too good to be true, run. That's what my mummy would say. Run. No. Everything costs money. Read the fine print. There is no way you're getting free money to make more money, unless we're talking about credit cards, but we'll talk about that another point in time. Now, it's also very illiquid, meaning that you put your money into property, it's not that easy to just get it out. So you put £20,000 on a deposit for a house, or you put £300,000 and you buy a whole house. You can't just stick a card into the letterbox and get the money back. It doesn't work like that. There's a lot of processes, there's a lot of paperwork, and even the process of selling houses can be expensive. So once you put your money in a property or investments like that, you kind of want it to sit there because it isn't that easy to get that money out in the short term. Now, values can go up or down, and it doesn't matter if you are a long-term investor. If you're going to keep a house for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that's fine. But if you're someone who's trying to make a quick buck, if you buy it at the peak and then it drops, you're kind of effed. And if you need that money, you're going to be in a tight space if that really expensive asset has gone down in value. Now, for people who buy properties on mortgages, which is 99.999% of people, you do buy a property on a mortgage. If that tenant decides not to pay, you are still liable to the bank. There are a lot of costs associated with being a landlord or having property. Remember, you are servicing people. It's not just buying a home to just hold, like, I'm just gonna have a house and it's gonna make me money. No, you're actually providing a service to someone. And if those people, they lose their job, like you've seen happen, if those people don't want to look after the house very much, you still have to pay for it. You're still liable. And also, sticking to that school of thought, there are quite a lot of unknown costs that can come up, such as a boiler breaking down. You got to pay for it. You've got to do all the gas safety checks. You've got to pay for the fees for eviction if you need to do an eviction. You've got to deal with quite a lot of costs when it comes to being a property owner or a landlord. Okay, so if I haven't dissuaded you now from my cons, then you are in the right place. Now, if you are thinking of making property one of the investments that you make, I think the first thing that you need to do is to save. Save. If you are a business owner, if you have a high salary, if you don't have a high salary, just get into the habit of saving in general, okay? Just be a saver, because the more money you have, the more leverage you have, the better interest rates you can have because you can put a higher deposit down. You might even be able to put 50% down on a property. Who knows what might happen? But the more you have saved, the more money you have to pull together, the more likely you are to negotiate a better deal when it comes to purchasing a property or getting a really good mortgage. Now, if you can't save, an option is to pool your income. So I know I said that it's expensive to put down a deposit, but I didn't put down my deposit for my first house alone. Me and my hubby were able to put our money together and put £30,000 down. We didn't have £30,000 as individuals, but when we put it together, we were able to have that initial deposit. And you don't have to have a partner to pull your income together. You might have a really good friend. You might have a family member. You will need to put some contracts in place, okay? Make sure you stay safe. Make sure you're able to afford what you're trying to invest in. But pooling your revenue together is a great option if you want to get on the property ladder as an investment or even as an individual. Do not over leverage yourself. I repeat, do not over leverage yourself. And I mean, basically, do not take out a lot of debt to basically buy an investment. It's not the smartest thing to do. Why have an investment that's more expensive than it costs you to actually live? That is literally going to be a noose around your neck. It's going to cause a lot of pain. It's going to cause a lot of stress. You really need to look at the affordability of a property for yourself as an investor. So if your tenant was to leave, can you afford it if they leave for 3 months? Can you afford it if a boiler breaks down? Can you afford those mortgage payments that you are still liable to pay, as well as dealing with your own personal life? You really need to make sure that you do not over leverage yourself. I also want to say that your own property is not an asset in the short term. So I know a lot of people think, well, I'm buying a property as an investment. It can work as an investment if you are also renting out the rooms in your own home. But remember, for you to realize the profit of the asset that you live in, you're gonna have to sell that asset. And then remember, everybody has to live somewhere. And I will say there is no such thing as free money. Please understand the concept of mortgages and interest. Mortgage actually means till death, right? It actually means like you're gonna be locked into this contract for a really long time. And when you look at the interest that you end up paying on a lot of properties, you actually end up paying the same value of the property, if not more, in the long run. But the benefit is that that asset usually appreciates. So there we have it. I think I've talked about property investing from my perspective. I hope it wasn't too casual. If there are any other details you want to know, I kind of shared how I built my portfolio, really. If you want to know more about what my plans are, I might know all of my properties are now tenanted. Everyone is comfortable and it feels really good. So we can't go around there. But if there's anything you want to know when it comes to property and property investing, I will be answering questions in the comments. So just hit me up. We'll have a chat. You can also follow me on The Break. If you're not already subscribed, hit the like button, join the family. But yeah, I'll see you all later. Bye.